So have you ever had trouble getting your kids to listen? Or maybe even getting your spouse to listen? I kind of pulled a fast one right before we went live. I'm like, hey, can you start this one? I forgot what I was going to say. And so Teresa kind of freaked out a little bit. But guys, if you've ever struggled with getting your kids to listen, getting them to do the things that you want them to do, we want to share how we actually use life coaching, asking questions to get them to not only commit to doing something, but to actually physically do it. Now, what you're not going to hear here is how we're going to convince, how we're going to trick, or how we're going to punish them to get them to take action. Truth is, none of those things work when it comes to creating connection, because we want to be able to do this where in a space where we create more connection and get them to take action. So it's in alignment with us creating not only a deeper connections with our family, but also getting everybody to take the actions that they can take to be a really important part of the family too. And so that's what we want to talk about here today. Now, we do have to say that what we're going to be talking about does not work every single time, but 50% of the time, it works every time. And if you're ready to do that with us, you're ready to lean in while the pain medication is still high in my brain, well, let's go.
It's time to redefine leadership. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. Our channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs like you to achieve the next level of success in business and life. We believe that you can create a massive impact in the world without compromising your personal life or family time to do so.
We're committed to providing you with actionable tips and strategies weekly to make that possible. So if you're ready to become a modern leader and make a lasting difference in the world, consider subscribing, turn on notifications, and dive into our community. We want to thank you for being here because the world needs your leadership now more than ever. Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back. I promise you I will get my legs under me, at least one of them. Guys, today we have a really, really powerful conversation that we'd love to have with you, because when it comes to actually creating connection with our kids, I've heard this really great quote in a team that I actually I'm a part of in terms of the teaching curriculum of the Dad Edge. And one of the things that they said is a lot of times connection comes during the repair. It comes during the times when you think that it's not an opportunity for connection, but in reality, getting the kids to take action, to listen, is actually a really great opportunity to actually connect you with them even more. Because in order for us to really get our kids to buy into it, we have to know a little bit about them. We have to know what they want. We have to be able to communicate with them in a way that's not a do this because I said so, but in a way that actually gives them some more information, but also gets them to see how doing that is actually going to be the best thing for them and for us together as a family. And so that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about using this Yoda trick of life coaching to be able to lean in and to create some incredible connection and get your kids to take action. So before we do that, I want to welcome everybody back to the channel. We have a lot of Inner Circle members. Gedeen, what's going on? By the way, Gedeen made Master Coach. What's going on, Master Coach? Steve's here. Nicole's here. Of course, Kurt's here. What's up, everybody? And then we have Leanne is here. What is going on, my friend? Anthony, as well as Cynthia. And of course, Inner Circle member Danielle. What's going on, Danielle? So we're going to dive right in today. All right. It's going to probably be a little bit shorter of a show today, because we really want to give you like the nuts and bolts for you to take and implement into your life, knowing that it's also not going to be something that once you do it once, it's instantly going to happen. It's going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time and energy, but it's really worth it in the end when you're able to get your kids to not only listen to you, but to take action. All right. So let's kind of start off. I think we have a first question. I think I'm probably the one to answer it, right?
Yeah. And it's really about like what inspired us to actually come up with this topic.
Yeah, 100%. So not only this topic, but also like this idea of how do I get my kids to listen in a way that creates more connection instead of disconnection? And that's because while I was going through my life when I was younger, there was specific tactics that were used to try and get me to take action. And I noticed that it created a lot of disconnection for me. And I didn't feel as connected as I could in those moments. And as I was getting older and we had kids, I noticed I was resorting to those old things that was do as I say, not as I do. Do this right now. Why? Because I told you to. And knowing that sometimes those things would get done when I was there, but a lot of times when I was not there, they would not get done. And I wasn't empowering them to be leaders. I was empowering them to be followers. And I noticed that I was going through this path too. And I thought, what is it that I could do to really turn this around? And it was while being a member of the Dad Edge Alliance. It's something that I teach in right now. But back then, when I first started 5.5, 6 years ago, they had this conversation about how do we get our kids to listen, but in a way that actually creates more connection. And that's where like my ears kind of perked up, because I knew at the time me forcing, me taking things away. Oh, if you guys do that, you're going to get less screen time, which, by the way, sometimes is like a punishment for the parents, by the way, because then you got to have to think of other things to do with them, right? And doing the old school things were not working. So as a life coach, I'm thinking, how can I improve this, but also at the same time improve the connection with my kids? And that's how this topic came up. Is I started to ask myself better questions that got me to not only get to know my kids even better, but find out how to use questions to be able to get them to show up and to take action. So that's why we wanted to bring this with you here today. I mean, it literally took me 5.5, 6 years to be able to figure out some of the things that we're going to be talking about here today. But I want to give you the speed boost so that you can use this and move forward with it. So that being said, I want to share, actually, one of the questions is, can you share a recent experience where we successfully got our kids to listen? This actually happened yesterday. I don't know if you know this, but you were the one who actually started this. So Mark has a broken leg. I am like in the process of getting over COVID. Thankfully, I tested negative. And I can't do a lot of the things that I necessarily used to do. One of those jobs was trying to take my puppy and give him a bath. So that's one of the things that I can't necessarily do. Wearing a cast, I can't go into the shower. I can't do any of those things, right? And so one of the things that we know about our kids is because we've done this so much, we know that to get them to do something that we want, we have to connect it with what they want. And right now, because we've been listening a lot, my daughter has some very specific, or my son has some very specific clothes that he wants to buy. And we know for sure that he would do anything right now to be able to get those things. My other son just likes to have a lot of money up on the refrigerator where he says, like, I just want to have money for when things kind of like come down, when things happen. And so one of the things Teresa said is she started with, hey guys, who would like to make some extra money tomorrow? Now, notice that she didn't start with like, oh, who wants to bathe the disgusting puppy, right? Which is a lot of what we tend to do is we just go from what we want and we're like, hey, who wants to do this? And then try to spin it around the other direction. Instead, she's like, who wants to make some money tomorrow? And two little hands at the table were like, me. And then we just talked to them about what we're looking for. Like what we would like is to get some help with bathing the puppy. This is what it would look like. And this is like what, we didn't tell them exactly how much, but today we're going to be like, this is how much we're willing to give you if you lean in and you help us do these things, because it needs to happen for the puppy. And even selling them on why it needs to happen for the puppy, because he also is a little bit gross right now and he needs to be cleaned. But getting them to buy into that, they're like, okay, what do I need to do? Actually, my son was like, what time do we need to do this in the morning? And I was just joking. I said 8 a.m. because they haven't been waking up at 8 a.m. And he's like, okay, I'm in. And I'm like, what? There's nothing that gets them out of bed at 8 a.m. in the morning. But it was because we sold it in a way that we know what they want. And we shared that with them first, how to get what they want. And how they get what they want is to be able to help out around the house and be able to help out Rocket, which they really love Rocket. And anytime that they can help him, they're up for it, right? And so it's how we communicate this, how we know about our kids, how we know what they truly want, instead of, hey, dad's hurt, you need to step up and you need to take some action, right? Because that works like never, right? Even if it does work, it creates disconnection rather than them thinking, I'm going to be able to get these clothes. I'm going to be able to get this Xbox game. I'm going to be able to do this. And they're willing to lean in and to do those things. So that was a recent example that happened yesterday. Teresa actually was the one who started that whole conversation, but it started with us, like really, even before this, asking questions to find out what they really want. And that is one big takeaway that I want you guys to take away from this. Now, there's a couple other questions that we want to field in terms of how we do this, some challenges that we've experienced, some different things. So let's jump into some of the questions so we can help answer them. But here's what I have to say too. If you're here on the call with us and you have questions that come up, maybe you have a scenario that you're like, I'm trying to get my kids to do this, feel free to type it in the chat. That's what we're here for, especially for these live calls, that we can actually give you some feedback for this. Because honestly, people think like they sign up for me to become their business coach. And what I realize is a lot of these things, like connecting with their family, being able to get their kids to take action, connecting with their spouse, like that's the thing that kind of unlocks the ability of them leaning into their business because they had something in their personal life that was kind of holding them back, right? So that's what we're here for. Definitely lean in as we go, okay? Now, the next question is, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges parents face in getting their kids to listen? So thinking about this, thinking about what are some of the things, why is parenting and getting them to take action so hard? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier, and it's because we're just kind of repeating what the experiences that we had as kids. And, not to throw our parents under the bus, but there were like situations or just parenting styles that they only knew back then. So we were just kind of repeating history. And when we realized that just doesn't, it's not going to work that way, and we do want more connection rather than disconnection with our kids, then we realize, okay, well, what are different ways that we can do this, right? And I think the biggest challenge is that part of it is just our upbringing, because we think, well, our parents taught us this way, or our parents brought us up this way, and this is all we know. But also, we're not really thinking about them as people. It's like, it's very authoritative, right? So, as humans, we all want to be seen and heard. And I think that that's kind of like the approach that we want to take, because it is a challenge to just, bark orders at kids, because that's not the way they're going to listen, right? And like I said, that's kind of like, especially when, so much is going on and you're like, I just need to get them to do something. And then that's like the default that we have, is to just give them orders and just do it because I'm asking you to do it. So I think the biggest challenge is that we kind of don't see them as like these other like humans that we're bringing up as adults too, right? We're like, we're the parent and they're the kids, and they just need to listen to us. So I think a lot of it has to do with us, not necessarily the kids, because I think that they just want to be seen and heard. And then if we approach it that way, then we can start to overcome those challenges.
Yeah. And as we were kind of talking, I was very dead set on what you were sharing right there, in terms of like that being one of the biggest problems. But another problem kind of popped into my mind too as you were having that conversation, and is like, sometimes we want to get things done fast right now. We don't want to have to take time. We don't want to have to think this through. We don't want to have to ask a question. Just do this right now. And we get into this mode where it's like, it needs to get done right now. And then everything is kind of like you said, it's barking in order, right? It's like, do this, do this, do this, which is not developing leaders. It's developing followers, right? They're having to wait for you to tell them exactly what to do, right? But we have this like instant, I want it done now, this very second, and I don't want to waste any time, right? I know that's with me, is like, I don't like wasting time. And when you see that actually going this other way by asking questions, figuring out what they want, being able to show them how them, leaning into what they want, leaning into what you want will actually get them what they want, is a little slower process. However, it creates that connection that you talked about, and it creates kids who actually buy into doing that thing. Now, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but like, how would it feel if your kids not only came up to the conclusion that they're going to take that action, but they bought into it, not because you bought into it? There's just a different energy, because that means when you're not there, they're also going to show up and they're going to take that action. They're going to do those things because they have bought into it. So being able to slow down so that you can speed up is something that I think a lot of parents struggle with, because they just want to get it done right now, this very second. Now, we're not even talking about like some of the things that we do if we're going through a problem in our business, or we just, got a message back from somebody saying they're not going to continue, or they're not going to sign up for you, and then bringing that energy into your kids, right? Where it's like, somebody just do this, right? That's just something else in and of itself. It's called bookending your day. You have to make sure that you take off your coaching hat or your business hat. For me, it was my police officer hat when I walked in the door and had a conversation with my kids, because there's also that kind of like disconnection when you're bringing in negative energy or emotions to your kids or to your family who are like in a totally different spot, in a different space, is also another thing. It's just there's a lot of things that could make it hard as a parent. And it's also the most rewarding job on the planet, because you're growing little humans who are going to go out, they're going to be responsible, they're going to be independent, and then they're going to be interdependent. And there's this like beautiful thing that you're doing when you're helping to give them the best opportunity to grow, knowing that they're going to make some mistakes and they're going to make some errors. But one of the things that I always love to think about is like when we're creating leaders and when we're creating like an environment of safety, I want them to, when the situation happens, be comfortable coming to me and asking me for help rather than, oh, my dad just barks orders at me and tells me what to do. Instead, like Teresa said, my dad is someone who I can share this with, and I have to share it with my dad because he's going to be able to help me through it, right? And that's the kind of not only environment, but that's the kind of connection that you can have if you're willing to slow down and find ways that connect what you want with what they want. Now, the next question is, why do you think kids sometimes struggle to listen to their parents? Kind of similar, but what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it was what I was saying earlier. Because they don't feel like you're really listening. I had a parent coach on the podcast Organized Chaos, and she talked about how we think that our kids aren't listening, and it's kind of like more of like this introspective approach to it, that we're not listening, right? We're the ones that not listening, because instead of asking why aren't they listening, it's more of, okay, well, what can I do? What am I not hearing? What am I missing that is having them have this behavior, right? So it's kind of like you look internally of the things that you can do and see if a different approach will help you better.
Yeah, I really like that. It's I know you kind of said this a little bit earlier. It's also like, I feel like one of the great synergies with a family is to feel like you're all on the same team. Like you're not fighting independent fights, right? I've seen this actually with husband and wife too. It's like a business or somebody's in the career world or vice versa, or both of them are in businesses, and they're kind of like fighting different fights, even though they're on the same team, right? And they actually haven't shared like what their common vision is and what they want to be able to achieve, right? And I kind of see this too with some families where the parents are on the same page and then the kids are on an entirely different page, right? Because you haven't slowed down enough to even ask them what they want, right? To slow down to figure out what they want to be able to achieve, right? One of the things that a tweak that I made that has been super beneficial is getting to find out what my kids are really interested in and get interested in that myself. So if my son is into anime, I'm going to ask, hey, what did you watch today in anime? Can I watch a part of it with you? Can I read a part of your manga? Can we, spend 15 or 20 minutes talking about this, going on a walk? Well, not much anymore, but you know what I mean? And my other son is like, hey, what are we playing today on, Xbox? Are we going to play Elden Ring? What are we going to do? And it's being able to find that place where it's a mixture of what they truly want to do and love, and me coming in and getting interested in what they're doing, and it reciprocates, right? It reciprocates the other way when I ask them to do things, right? When I'm, getting them to maybe not do something that they love, but getting them to see that, hey, this is just a part of, having a team here, doing the dishes, those kind of things, right? And how you do that initially is you connect with them on that level first, and then they're more likely to be open to connecting with you. Now, this is not the easiest thing in the world, especially when you just need something done. If you just are looking at the dishwasher and you're like, I need the dishwasher emptied, and this person has said they're going to do it and they didn't do it, we can create a whole lot of disconnection by approaching it that way, as opposed to what Teresa said and just thinking about like maybe they just need to be reminded, or maybe there's something else that we can do to make it so that it is the forefront of their mind. And then guess what we'll do? We will ask. Like that is something that, like Teresa was saying, like sometimes they don't feel like they're a part of the team, or they feel like they're just not their own human, is I used to not ask them a lot. I used to come up with all the decisions on my own. And when you ask them, especially like my younger son, he has so many different ideas and gets so creative. I'm like, I would have never thought of that on my own, right? And it's literally by asking them and creating that connection. Because when you have that connection, promise you the chances of them doing what it is that you want them to do, when you relate it to how, it's going to help them achieve whatever they want to achieve or not, sometimes they will be much more likely to be able to do that. Okay, let's talk about like positive reinforcement. All right. So a lot of people talk about like, taking things away or giving things and all that kind of stuff. I just want to hear from you. Like, what are your thoughts about that? The difference between like punishing, taking things away, having a consequence versus like having that kind of like positive reinforcement where, you know, you're giving them things or you're incentivizing them for more of like what you want.
Yeah, I think, and I want to preface this with we are not the perfect parents. We're not parenting coaches or anything like that. We're just, sharing our experience and like sharing the things that have worked for us. So I just want to preface it with that.
Yeah, by the way, Teresa is a perfect parent. I
No.
suck at it. Go ahead.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I think, it's not like we're never going to discipline or like punish or, tell our kids that there are certain things that they're not allowed to do and there's consequences, right? So I think that that's one of the things that like it's not going to be 100%, hey, I always have to incentivize our kids because that's like the only way we can do it. I think there is a mixture of it. But I think some of the positive reinforcements is understanding our kids and what their love languages, or what are some of the things that like really light them up, and use that for positive reinforcement. And I think that listening and asking questions is the very best thing that we can do. A lot of times, like I said, we bark orders, but if we ask them for advice sometimes, or if we ask them like what it is that they want, like, how can I help you do X, Y, and Z? Do you need support in this area? So it's like asking those questions so that they can, know that you are in their corner. Right. So, yeah, I think that that's one of the things that I think about when it comes to positive reinforcement.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think what you were talking about, like related to consequences or punishment, we do have consequences, right? So for us, we have a very specific set of things that we ask the kids to do, and if they do that, they get a certain amount of extra screen time for the day. If they don't do that, the consequence is they don't get any extra screen time. So they get to that part of the day and they ran out with their couple of hours of screen time, and they send us a request, and we're like, have you taken those actions? And they're like, no. We're like, okay, so what are some things we can do so that tomorrow you can get the screen time back, right? And we don't go into, nope, see, you didn't do this. Why didn't you do this? Like if you had just not done this and this and this, you would have, like, there's no connection right there, right? Instead, it's like, hey, what can we do so that tomorrow you can get that screen time back? Because I want you to be able to have that screen time. What is something differently that we can do, right? Not giving them the screen time today, but also focused on how can they get more of it tomorrow, rather than like we said, or like I said, like, oh, nope, you don't get it today. Why are you doing that? Why aren't you taking this action? All that kind of stuff, right? We're kind of like minimizing them at that point. Instead, we're reframing it. Ask them a powerful life coach question. If you could do the day all over again, what would you do differently? Something similar to that, and get them to see what they can do to actually be able to earn that piece. Does that make sense? You did say something else, and that is like asking for. You said something about asking for their opinion
Advice.
and their advice. What did you say at the end? Because it really like sparked an idea in me that I wanted to really share that I'd never thought of sharing before. You want to rewind? You want to hit the rewind button?
What did I say, Kurt?
Hopefully that will come up again. Because I know that, and maybe just talking about it, I know just having conversations and meeting them where they are, and creating that kind of like safe environment. Oh, I know what it is. In that's like asking them specific questions. This is kind of related to how you can get them to take action, but it's more related to the actions that they want to take, or getting them to think outside the box and develop them into leaders instead of followers. And that is like a great question that you can ask is like, oh man, like that sounds like it's really frustrating. What do you think you're going to do? Because when you ask them a question like that, or how can I best support you in this, right? How would you best need me to show up in this situation? Now it's kind of like I'm asking them so that they can give me some feedback, so I can really create that connection, so that when I do have an ask later, they're more likely to say yes to my ask, because I'm asking how I can best help, right? But I'm also not telling them, do you want me to do this for you? I'm asking them like, how can I best show up and support you on this? How can I best show up as the parent that loves you and also wants you to succeed, but knows that you're going to fail sometimes?
I have to work on that.
Really asking these kind of questions will help them to get to see that you're on their side, but you're also not going to come up with all the answers for them, right? You're going to develop leaders and not followers. And if they're like, I don't know, what are some ideas? You could throw out some ideas, or you can just ask them more questions, right? What is a way that you could use your strengths, right, to be able to tackle this, right? Even something like that will be able to give them some ideas and thoughts in terms of how to verbalize how they can solve that problem. And I know we're not directly talking about getting them to take action, but when you do that, when you slow down, when the most important person is them in the room, oof, I got to tell you, that is going to be reciprocated. And all the thoughts, all of the things you have going on, all the work that you have to do right now, all of these other things are irrelevant when they're in the room. And that's your focus for your attention, right? Because when you do that, you make them feel like Teresa said, like they're both seen and heard. That's going to get them more likely to want to take the actions that you're going to ask them to take in the future, right?
Yeah, and I think that you're really good at that. I still have to work on that because I'm like, let me just do it for them.
Which part?
The like asking them, like, okay, so what do you think you can do, rather than just doing it for them, right? Where obviously, like encouraging independence, right? So they can think on their feet, they can think for themselves, so that when they're adults, they don't feel like they have to rely on other people, that they can actually become problem solvers rather than like, staying like in the problem because they don't know what to do, because they haven't kind of developed those skills, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's funny that you think that I'm good at that. What I do is I realize when I'm going down the wrong path, and I stop and I just say, what's the question I can ask? Because if I start to feel angry or frustrated, I'm like, stop, Mark, what's a question I can ask? And that's literally what I do by default now, because I'm like, going down the wrong path. I'm doing mentoring. I'm telling them what to do. I'm taking, and like you said, we're not perfect, right? But I feel a certain way in my body, and I'm like, I don't want to feel that way. I want to be curious instead, right? So how can I be more curious? How can I ask a question to help identify what's on the inside? Because here's the thing, especially with kids, we found this out with our son while he was going through therapy, is one of the things that kids struggle with is verbalizing out loud what's on the inside. And by asking them questions that get them to verbalize outside, it helps them to release the anxiety, and it helps them to be able to verbalize and share how they're feeling. And if you're not you shouldn't feel that way, boys don't cry, all of those kind of things that we heard when we were younger, like as long as you don't do that, like you're going to be able to get them to have it come on the outside. And by them to being able to do that, they're going to feel more comfortable and confident to have conversations like that with you in the future. Now, there is a really, really great question I want to skip to here. And that is like, what are some ways we involve our kids in setting expectations? Okay. So here's something that I do want to share with you when it comes to like setting expectations. Like it says, we like to get our kids involved in setting expectations. Like, what's going to happen when you do this? What's going to happen if you don't? Not us. We don't like to be like, hey, this is what's going to happen if you do this, and this is what's going to happen when you don't. We also like to get them kind of involved too. Perfect example, we use this all the time, is my daughter or my son was having trouble waking up early in the morning time, like trying to get up early, trying to, get started in school days. And we were doing the first type of parenting, which was giving ultimatums, taking things away, all that kind of stuff. And guess how much that worked?
0 times.
0 times. 0 times. And so I went on a walk with him, and I'm like, hey, like, Mom and I really want to see what we can do to get you up earlier, not just because we want you to get up early, but because we want you to be able to eat. We want you to be able to not feel rushed and flustered, like sometimes you forgot to do your homework and all this kind of stuff. Like, we want you to have that cushion because we don't want you to have to feel like that. Like, do you like feeling like that? And he was like, no, I don't like feeling like I'm rushed. And I'm like, okay, so what do you think is a way that we could get you to get up so that you can have that buffer space, so you don't feel like you're rushed every single morning? You have time to eat if you're hungry, and you're like good to go. And like, if you have free time, you could even play your game. If you're done, everything's done and you're ready to go. Like, well, I have no problem playing in the morning time. And he was like, wow, so you let me play in the morning time? He said, well, you know what I've been really wanting is I've been really wanting to wear an Apple Watch. So could I use like your guys' old Apple Watch if I wake up on time? And I'm like, okay, so how about this? If you wake up before 7:30, you get the watch. What happens if you don't wake up after 7:30? And he's like, well, then I guess I just wouldn't wear the watch that day. I'm like, okay, and that sounds like a good plan. So if you wake up at 7:30, you come get me. I'm going to tell you where the watch is. We're going to have it charged. You're going to be able to use it because you want to track your steps. Perfect. And if not, we'll just figure out what we can do differently so that for the next time, right? And that was a plan that I would have never thought of unless he told me about it. And then asking what expectations are and let him set them, not in a way that's like, hey, if I get up at 7:30, I can wear it. And if I don't get up at 7:30, I can still wear it, right? Believe it or not, we think our kids are going to say that, but they don't. I actually found Andrew is actually harder on himself when he sets expectations.
Mhm.
He's like, okay, and then I'm not going to get this, and I'm not going to get this, and I'm not going to get this. And I'm like, whoa, that's a little bit too much, buddy. You're like all or nothing. I wonder where you got it from, right? But being able to like get them to come to those expectations of what's going to happen if they do, what's going to happen if they don't, and just verbalizing it, you'd be amazed at what they come up with. And then all you're doing is holding them to what they said, right? Because now it's like, well, you said if you didn't wake up at 7:30, you couldn't get it, right? And if you woke up at 7:30, you could. So we're just going to follow through with what it is that you said. Can you see a little difference between that versus me being the bad guy? Because I didn't come up with that rule, right? So anytime we can, we'll try to get the kids involved when it comes to setting expectations. Anything on that? Okay, so let's go to the last one. And that is like, what advice would you give to parents who are struggling with this issue right now? So having watched this, having listened to this, if you like, is there one piece of advice that you're like, hey, this is the best place to start right now? What do you think that would be for you?
I think really focusing on you, like focusing on like how you approach this from a mindset perspective. That I know there's some comments in here like we're ruining our kids, but like you're here and like people who ruin their kids don't really care. Like the fact that some parents are like, well, I want to learn how to be a better parent. Right there, you're a good parent because you're wanting to grow, you're wanting to learn, you're wanting to, be a better communicator. So I think that really just giving yourself grace, right? I mean, we're going to make mistakes. Of course, we're going to make mistakes. And each stage of our kids' lives gets progressively harder. And each time we feel like we're failing. So we just have to kind of like look inward and just say, okay, first off, like we're trying our best and it is what it is, right? So I think it's just kind of that. I don't know if I answered that question, but
yep, 100%. And I think to tag along with that is also, instead of taking yourself into the space of I'm not a good parent, I'm sucking, I'm making mistakes, think about this as this actually just presents an opportunity for me to step up and be the parent that I truly want to be. Because here's the thing, every single time that we have a situation that we can put ourselves into and we take a step and we go, wait, take a breath here. Mark and Teresa, we're talking about this. This is something we talked about. Let me actually discuss it and think of it in my head before I actually lean in and actually have this conversation. Now you're actually stepping into this as an opportunity to figure out how to bridge that gap versus just immediately responding and reacting with whatever you typically would do, right? So it's just an opportunity to think about this a little differently, right? We call it a pattern interrupt. What we mean by pattern interrupt is typically what we do as humans is we automate things that happen, we automate things, of course they happen automatically. And basically what happens is a situation happens and we immediately react and respond. We don't take the time to think. We don't take the time to wonder what it is that we truly want here. We don't take the time to slow down at all because our brain doesn't want to use up that energy. But if we have been messing this up, we've been showing up the way that we haven't been showing it, that we haven't wanted to show up. We've got to ask ourselves, how do we interrupt ourselves right before we go down that path and create that disconnection? And so when we can think about that, we can go, wait, this is a situation that we were talking about earlier today. How do we communicate? How do we connect with our kids? How do we actually make this in a moment where we actually repair the relationship rather than continue to destroy it? Then you can go into your brain and go, okay, let me try some of these tactics that Mark and Teresa said. Knowing that they may or may not work, they're probably also not going to work the first time. Your kids are going to be like, what? Why are you asking me? You usually tell me. And it takes a little bit of time, right? And here's how I would respond to that, by the way. I want to set you up for success. This is also the way that I would respond to your spouse when you start asking questions instead of, shaming or guilting or whatever it is that you've been taught your whole life and you've been doing. Instead, just saying, hey, listen, I really want to get better for you. Like, I don't want to be the person who just reacts and responds that way. I'm not showing up as the best version of me. I literally went to a class today to learn how I can communicate better with you. And I want to get to know you better. And I'm going to ask you questions. And I want to find out what you really want. Because right now, what I want is irrelevant. And so I'd love to be able to connect with you. And it might feel weird. I might ask you some questions and you may not want to ask them. That's okay. I'm doing it because I want to be better for you. Now, here's the thing. Like, the person can take it however they want to, but how would you take that if somebody told you that, right? Thinking about like how we communicate this, especially when we're doing something new, red flags are going to potentially go up going, why is mom doing that? Why is dad doing that, right? And so if you have a way of communicating this, now the pressure kind of like gets released. And now it's going to be like, hey, I'm just going to try things to figure out like what's going to work, because I really do value not just getting you to do what we want you to do. I value the connection that we have, and I value setting you up for success, but I also value me growing as a parent. And just like everything, we all fail, right? They fail at things. We definitely fail at things. I mean, we've had to fail to get to where we are today, right? And just even bringing that up, even if it's a conversation at the table, is one that will create more connection, because like I wrote there, the relationship is built most in the repair. It's built in the repair. It's that process of being willing to show up differently, being willing to see this as an opportunity, being willing to pivot and say, you know what? Maybe that's the way that I've always grown up and what I've always done. But today I'm doing something different because I care for you. I love you guys. I want to figure out a way of showing up as the best version of me. I do that in my business. I do that with my work. Why wouldn't I do that with you? And when you lean into that, and I know you truly do believe this, that you do want to show up as the best version of you, like, that's all they can ask for, is having a parent who's not just perfect, who's not like everything just happens just, Mr. Rogers style, but instead being willing to grow and become that parent because you want it so bad for them, but also you want it so bad for yourself, is a really powerful thing. And I'll take that parent over the perfect parent anytime. So, all right. You want to pull a card for today?
Oh, yeah.
So every single week, we pull a card to be able to ask during your dinner time today with your family. And let's see what the question is. This one is for the younger kids. So we'll see what comes up from it. And just so you guys know, next week, we have a call specific for our inner circle. So everybody who has a green name right here, the Gideons, the Nicoles, all of you guys, you're invited to join us for our inner circle call next week. What we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about how we get others to take action to help them achieve the goals that they want to achieve. So today we talked a lot about kids. Next week, we're going to be talking about clients. We're going to be talking about spouses. We're going to be talking about significant others. We're going to be talking about friends and how we can actually get them to take action for what they want. Not necessarily for what we want, but we want them to be able to achieve more results, be able to be shouting us from the rooftops because we've been able to help them achieve some goals. And there's ways that we can show up best to be able to get them to take that action. That's what we're going to be diving into. If you're not a member of the inner circle, below this video, you'll see a join button. It's $10 a month. You get 2 calls that are specific to building a business you love, connecting with your family on a deeper level, and being able to get into the best physical, mental shape of your life. If that's something you're interested in, we have a huge community inside of our app that you would be a part of too. Click the join button and you'll learn all those details. Okay, so the question is, what? Did you do this one on purpose?
Yeah.
The question is, if you could start your own business, what would it be? That's such a great question. Turn it around. All of you guys are on here, have businesses. What if you asked your kids? What if you ask your spouse, hey, if you could start your own business, what would it be? And here's the thing. I want you to just listen. I want you to just like ask them, listen, ask more questions, get them to pull out. I think it would be an awesome conversation to have, to just ask them what type of business they would start. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. I appreciate you for leaning in. I also appreciate everybody reaching out to me and asking me how I'm doing. I'm doing fine. I've got this amazing wife right here who's pretty much doing everything for me. I don't even know how I got into this seat right now, but I did. I'm so proud of myself. But guys, thank you for making it here. Thank you for leaning in. And thank you for being the parent that your kids need now more than ever. Like, no matter where you are right now, no matter like what you've done in the past, no matter what you did 5 minutes before this video, I want you to just like really know that you're the exact parent that they need. It's just about looking for the opportunities, continuing to grow, continuing to tap into resources like this to continue to grow as a parent and as a business owner. And by doing that, you're literally modeling the behavior for them, and you're going to change their generation forever, because their parents are going to be the type that connect with them, not tell them what to do, not give them punishments, not try to do all this disconnection. And by doing that, you're actually going to teach them how to teach their kids too. So thank you for being willing to fight that fight. Thank you for leaning in. And above all, keep leading from the front, team. We'll see you guys next weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.